Hello, everyone. I'm Jean-Claude at BeyondMystic, and welcome to this Galactic Download episode with IndigoAngel. Of course, you can find her work at IndigoAngel222.com. Let's give her a big warm welcome today. Amanda, how are you doing?
I'm doing well today. I'm happy to be here. Happy winter solstice. Happy Yule. How are you doing, Jean-Claude?
I'm doing much better. I actually slept last night for the first time in quite some while, so I'm well rested and ready for the show. And it's quite exciting today. Actually, I woke up early this morning to participate in the meditation, the mass meditation that was happening in Uluru in Australia. And somebody says no sound. Crypto Tarzan muted. Maybe Crypto Tarzan, that's on your side. I hear Amanda perfectly, and I'm broadcasting sound as well. Hey guys, if you can hear me, please give me a 5x5. Make sure that we are live here and the sound is coming through okay. So let me keep going here. So at any rate, yeah, there was this, let me bring that up actually, if I can find that video I did yesterday and show you guys what that was all about. So here it goes here. Yeah, so the elders and the original people here in Australia were organizing this mass meditation that coincided with both the solstice and also this grand conjunction between Jupiter and Saturn. So quite some powerful energies. I did this interview last week with Stephen and Evan Strong with Loretta Ontario, and they will be coming back on the show for an update hopefully in the next couple of days. And they've sent me already some pictures of the sky phenomena that they were witnessing there during this meditation. So some of them are quite fascinating. So I can't wait to do that show. How about you, Indigo? Did you feel any new energies coming up this morning here as maybe this world mass meditation was taking place?
I really did feel the because it's the shortest period of daylight and the longest night of the year. So I kind of felt as I was waking up, it just felt darker, longer. I haven't got to do a global mass meditation yet, but that's definitely something I'd like to do later today. There's a lot of them going right now. They're all over Facebook. They're all over YouTube. So, yeah, definitely recommend joining something like that for today.
Absolutely. So go connect outside with nature, go sit on a rock somewhere, go hug a tree, whatever you can do. Try to get out of the city if you can and get out of all the EMF disturbances and really try to connect, because the energy, like you say, of this meditation is happening simultaneously everywhere. So you can just connect into it. And even I told my daughter, because she woke up late this morning, the eldest one, and she says, "Oh, Daddy, I missed the time for the Ulu thing. Can I do it again?" I said, "Yeah, no problem." I said, "Just imagine you're like Superman and you're flying around the planet to go back in time, like in the movie, and just go back to your meditation and send your energy there." She's like, "Oh, okay, I'll do that." So anyways, I thought that was pretty cool. Kids have a good imagination, so it's good to keep them involved. Today, folks, thank you so much for joining us here on our backup channel. If you just found us again, please do subscribe. As you know, we got deleted on the main channel here a week ago, and we are just now trying to rebuild our community of 12,000 strong subscribers here. So we're almost hitting the 2,000 mark. We're getting there slowly but surely. So please do hit that notification bell and forward this video to your friends so that they can find us again. And also, please maybe check me out on Twitter. If this YouTube channel goes down again, at least you'll have access there to all of my feeds and to my posts so that I can let you know where to find me. And on that note, also, if you can bookmark my beyondmystic.net website, there I have an update on my censorship and my appeals with YouTube. And you'll also find the links to my new alternative accounts here on Parler, on BitChute, and on Gab, and so on and so on. That is the nature of the battle today. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And of course, today we have a very special guest who will be coming on the show in about 25 minutes from now. Indigo and I are going to set up the stage here for this conversation, but essentially we're going to get into his research. It's Daniel E. Shaw's research on the France Vortex Maps. I've gone through some of the material he sent me for the research here for this show, and so has Indigo, and we're quite excited to get into that with him because it correlates with a lot of the research that Indigo has been up to in the last little while here, trying to tabulate and collate a lot of these very interesting spots around the world. So here, maybe Indigo, I'll give you the floor to kind of set the stage here for the audience for this guest speaker that we're going to have on here in about 20 minutes.
Yeah, so we're going to have Dan Shaw on, and he wrote about, it's like a little 24-page insert, and he's wrote a lot of other inserts as well on his website, so vortexmaps.com, which I had to second to check out. I believe he has some stuff on Stonehenge and just some other really detailed going into the geometry of the vortex sites and some extensive research. And so, yeah, we're going to get to talk to him and kind of hear his theory. He really focuses on France in this one, particularly that we're going to talk about today, and goes into basically the pentagram and all of the different sacred sites in France that, you know, connect through these different pentagram geometrics. And yes.
I'm jumping at the pentagrams here because you and I have been following closely the work of Florida Maki, who's also been looking at all of these pentagram structures, ruins around the world, and how they are aligning into a very, very interesting grid that nobody seems to have noticed before. And so there's a big army now of researchers that are looking into these specific sites and building this map. And so there's something to it. And of course, now with the subject of today, the solstice, and also this grand alignment, it could very well be that there is energy being pumped through this grid at this time. And this is why, for example, the originals and the elders in Australia are looking at this very time here today to talk about this and bring it to human consciousness. So I'm really excited to have Dan up next here to talk about all of this stuff.
Yeah, so I kind of think of it, especially today, the winter solstice, I kind of think of it as an angular planetary ley line activation, because Uluru is considered a 6-dimensional Syrian stargate. It's hosted by the Syrian stargate location. Like if you go ahead and pull up that one visual I sent you, but during this time we have the rising of Sirius, and this aligns to the 3 kings in Orion's belt. And so this is, you know, it's a major activation. This is what's happening on the southern hemisphere. They're getting this influx of this Syrian stargate, this mother energy, this feminine Christed energy, the Shekinah energy. And so if you're really spiritually attuned right now, a lot of these key phrases are really activating at this time. Like awakening of the sacred rose, twin flame activations right now are really big because there's this balancing of the poles, there's this balancing of the polarity. So people who are carrying Akashic records or archetypal energy to Yeshua and Mary Magdalene, Michael and Mary, Arthur and Guinevere, basically what this activation brings, this healing of the Essene divide. And so I call it an angular ley line activation because of the winter solstice. So it's a 23.5 degree tilt. The North Pole never points directly at the sun, but on the summer solstice and the winter solstice, it's as close as it can be and as far as it can be. So the Uluru activations in Australia, they're stretching the planetary frequency to its full potential, all the way into 12-dimensionally encoded energy. So this is all the mother art gates. They expand in their electrical fractal fields and their geometrics, and this infuses the grids and activates at other vortex sites on the planet, particularly along the 23.5 degree tilt. So everything, like if you drew a line from Uluru to France, to Monsegur France, which is considered the 12th dimensional stargate location on the planet, it's a Lyran solar stargate. You would see how it's sending the currents from south to north to these locations. And so particularly France right now, it's really activated. So it's perfect timing, perfect alignment that we would have Dan come on to talk about all of this energy here.
Yeah,
And
that's getting into an echo. If you can bring the volume down a little bit.
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Just making sure. But yeah, you can find all the 12 dimensional inner Earth and outer Earth solar Stargate sites at ascensionglossary.com. That site is through Lisa Renee, but I believe this site, I tried to get on it this morning because I wanted to actually show you guys how all of the Stargate locations were encoded to specific universal Stargate nations. But the site was down this morning, so that was interesting.
Yeah, I'm checking again. It's still down. So let me bring the URL to the audience here so that they can go check later on. Indigo, if you can bring your volume down, I'm hearing back from you.
Okay, is that better?
I hope so. And there's still a bit of an echo. That is weird. We were okay when we started the show. Folks, let me know what the sound looks like if you're hearing that echo as well. Maybe Indigo, I'm going to ask you to leave the studio and come back in, and we'll try to fix that issue for the audience here. So why don't you just leave studio and just log back in? Let's try that. I'm still hearing the echo. All right, folks, it won't be too long here. I apologize for the sound issues here. Sometimes that happens when you're running a live show, so it won't be too long here. Indigo will be back with us. And of course, Dan Shaw, I think I said David earlier, so my mistake. Daniel E. Shaw will be joining us here in about 15 minutes from here. Jenny says she's good, but just JC is echoing. Yeah, I was hearing my voice coming back from her speakers. So I think that maybe might have been the problem. Let me check some of my settings as well to make sure that I'm still correct here. Let me see. Hold on, folks. Audio. Yeah, I'm still, that should be okay. All right. Yeah, see, no more echo. Yeah, because the echo is coming back from Indigo's channel when she's logged on here. So we'll try to get back. Won't be too long here. So folks, yeah, please do. If you haven't seen those 2 episodes, well, that main episode I did with Stephen and Evan Strong on this meditation in Uluru, you still have time today. I mean, people are sometimes a little bit, how do you say it, snippy about, meditating exactly at the same time, but I always feel that the intention is key. So if you want to bring your intention back to that time frame and join the group, you can do that at any time. So please participate. I mean, we have nothing to lose here. Okay, so Indigo is back. Let me bring her back on the screen here. All right, can you give me a sound check?
Mic check, mic check.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Were you a DJ in past life? All right. Okay, so let's get back into the solstice, Amanda, and the grand conjunction that we have occurring today. What are your notes or cliff notes here that you want to share with the audience, and why this day is important, and how maybe humanity can use some of this energy here to propel us forward on the right timeline, and also for healing and basically sending love around the planet. So let's get into that a little bit here before Dan joins us here for the show.
I guess some of my main observations have been that, well, we have the conjunction is in Aquarius, so Jupiter and Saturn in Aquarius. Aquarius is going to rule 2021. February 2021, we're going to have 7 planets in the sign of Aquarius. So the last time that happened, the Dark Ages, ended, and the Renaissance was a big deal. It was like the rebirth of the Golden Age. So, it could bring forth a big spiritual shift. The plague's going to end, the C-19's going to, everything's going to start maybe possibly shifting in February 2021 because, we're going to have a mind and spiritual revolution with so many planets being in Aquarius. I think a lot of this kind of leads back to France as well, because if you think about the history of France. You know, the Renaissance was a big revolution, the golden age in France as well. So I think we're kind of merging with some of these time waves. Everything's kind of becoming relative again. If you just, you know, kind of dig into some of the pagan history of France, I think it starts with the Franks. And I'm wondering if you know a lot about this because you're from France, correct?
My ancestors are from France. We've been here in Canada for many generations. But yeah, being from a region in Canada where they teach French history as part of the curriculum, I do have some background on all of this. What strikes me, and I've had this conversation with other guests in the last couple of weeks about this idea of the divine feminine energy rising again on the planet. And now you just mentioned the French Revolution. There was this story about the Marians, or the what they would call the bare-breasted warriors in France, which really galvanized the unity of the population here to fight for freedom. And this momentum is coming back here again. Of course, Notre Dame de Paris was burning a couple of years ago, and underneath, and that, of course, is the I guess the seat of the male, wounded male patriarchy run by the religion is sitting on top of this Isis temple there. So we can see this energy is starting to bubble up. And I think this is where entering here into the age of Aquarius, the elders at Uluru were also saying that we're entering into a time frame where the divine feminine is going to take her role or reclaim her role or part of her role in the governance structures of the planet, because of course she's been put underground here, and we need to come back to this balance. And so they were very clear that we were getting into a position now where, and I say quote here, real women would come back to the governance systems. And they made it clear that it wasn't the Margaret Thatchers of the world or the Hillary Clintons of the world, which, you know, kind of imitate the patriarchal system. We're talking about real women. At least that's what I'm paraphrasing here from what they were saying. So what are your thoughts on all of this in terms of the divine feminine energy coming into the fold here as we're getting all of these astrological alignments and also entering here in the context of the conversation we're having today about these vortexes and how we can access maybe that energy or help promote that energy?
I definitely think you can see that more in like Finland. Finland's prime minister, I mean, they have an all-female prime minister cabinet. Saren, her name is Saren Masana. I'm not pronouncing her name right, but yeah, they have a female prime minister. I think Denmark even just elected their first indigenous female prime minister as well. So I think we're starting to see more of that evolution in the northern countries, in the Cygnusian countries, in the countries that are held down by the national emblem of Cygnus, because it's in the constellation of Cygnus, it's kind of like this bold expression of the divine feminine, the stronger, more matriarchal expression of the divine feminine, kind of the opposition of the divine, the wounded feminine, that you would see in like the Hydra constellation. I kind of bring everything back to Stargate Cygnus at the end of the day, but I mean, you know, this is kind of like the Joan of Arcs, right? The Joan of Arcs of France. And so, I mean, but France has been, I think they've been at the forefront of fighting for freedom of religion since the 13th century. I mean, I think why this comes up is because they were the closest in fighting the wars to the Holy Roman Empire. And this kind of gets us into the Cathars. Because that 12D solar stargate that's activating at this time, the winter solstice, I mean, there's several Cathars that exist there. There's underground caves and grottos. And the Cathars were considered the good Christians that were basically denounced by the Catholic Church. So this kind of gets into the Holy Grail. This gets into the Knights Templar. And even one of the locations that we're going to talk about in Dan Shaw's Vortex Maps books, Rennes le Chateau. I don't think we have a map of that one to pull up, but that's one of the points in this pentagram. And that's considered to be a really occult place where, you know, the occult history is very deep. Like I said, it's considered to be where the Cathars are, the Holy Grail, also Solomon Temple's treasures. There's just a lot that's all within that area. I think the Rennes le Chateau is a little bit north of that area, but that Chateau de Monsegur, that would be the 12th dimensional Stargate encoded to the Lyran solar energy.
What was the other? What do I have the link to the other chateau you wanted to talk? I thought it was this one.
That's the Stargate location, but there's another location that's actually to the east that's considered the Grotto of Mary Magdalene.
Oh, I do have that.
And
this one here?
Yes, that location there, Saint Maxim. That's supposed to be considered where there's, you know, that's where Mary Magdalene escaped to, and she lived in a cave there for, you know, 30 years after the crucifixion of Christ. And she settled in the south of France. It's supposed to actually hold her skull in bones. Like in this grotto, like there's like her skull is in there. There's like a website that has an article on that I just crossed the other night when I was kind of researching some of this stuff. But essentially, it's supposed to be a very sacred place. All of the kings and queens of France have went there to pray. Louis XIV, the longest reigning monarch in France, would often, and I guess you have to hike like a long way to get to these caves. Like these are all hidden, like deep in the underground systems and in the cave systems of the mountains. And yeah, so it's really interesting, all of this information.
Wow.
Because
I'm bringing up some of the pictures here for the audience to see. You guys can type that into to Google Images here to find them. There's a few also on that wiki page I just brought up. I'm trying to find the one you had sent me, another cool one closer up to the altar, and I wanted to show that to the audience, but I don't know if I have it still on the screen here. At any rate, yeah, that whole story to me is fascinating, and of course, it piqued our curiosity when Dan Brown wrote that famous book there before Angel and Demons. What was it called? Oh, the Da Vinci Code, right? So we got into quite a bit of this history with the Priory of Sion. Yeah. Fascinating stuff. I can't wait to dive more into these locations.
There's just so much here. There's so many altars, and there's multiple altars to Mary Magdalene, all in these locations. I mean, the more that I start researching it, the more that I'm like, okay, the next place on my checklist to go visit is going to be France, because this is just rich in spiritual energy and the feminine Christed energy, with Mary Magdalene being the main disciple of Christ. And even that, there's several Isis temples, because when we had the Roman invasions, this spread all the way across France into Egypt. So France took on the Isis worshipped, and as you just mentioned, the Notre Dame Cathedral, there's supposed to be an Isis temple that was underneath the Notre Dame Cathedral. But these Isis temples are supposed to be spread all along the Seine River, or the Seine River. And it's interesting because when you kind of look at the Seine River and kind of compare it to the Nile, it's very similar in the fact that the river runs through Paris. It's kind of like the lifeblood of the country, just similarly to the Nile is. And it's just so you can kind of see why that Isis energy would have been inherited in France so deeply. There's just a lot of similarities in the land and the geography.
Right. I wonder how much of the knowledge and the information that was brought forward by Dan Brown was actually accurate and how much was fantasy. Because of course, after the book came out, there was a bunch of people debunking it and, saying that it was all fantastical. But yet 20 or so years later here, almost 30 years ago, I guess that book came out, there's more and more information that's coming out that suggests that maybe part of it was actually true. And so we're still digging, I guess, for that information to come out. And I'm always fascinating, especially now in these days, in the last couple of years, it feels like these old texts and these mystery schools are coming out and sharing some of that information, because now when you search them online, you can find them, whereas 5-10 years ago, you couldn't find any of that. And you also have this aspect where people out of the blue are just starting to remember these facts, and they don't know how they know these facts, and they're starting to pick up and talk about it on the YouTube channels and everywhere. So this information wants to come back up to the surface, and I find that very fascinating. Even in the Midwest and Southwest of the United States, I've been doing a lot of work in New Mexico, and with some of the tribes there, and the medicine women there also are talking about this divine feminine energy coming up, and they're taking a bigger role now, more of a leadership roles. And in some cases, it's causing some strife with some of the old male chiefs who used to do things one way. But the medicine women and the women's in the tribe now are saying, no, we have to bring all of this together now. We have to come and bring this knowledge together for humanity. Now is the time. So I'm very excited about the days we live in now. And I see now that our guest is just coming up in our studio here. So let me bring up the website he sent me here so that we can share that with the audience as he comes up. And I also have his website here. So, of course, our guest coming up in a minute now is Daniel E. Shaw. You can find his work at danshaw.com. Yes, at danshaw.com. And he is the author of the book, France Vortex Map. Let's give him a big warm welcome to the show. Dan, how are you today?
I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, we're excited to have you. And I think what I'm going to do is cede the ground here to my lovely co-host. He is the one really who does all of this great research on the vortices around the planet. And she's very excited to talk to you and to get into some of this information. But first, give the audience here a little bit of a background as to how you got into this work and how you got into this latest book of yours. And I'll give the audience here a link to that. So if they're interested, they can go purchase that book on your website as well. But give us a little bit of a background here as to how universe conspired to bring you to this work.
Well, the feeling's mutual. I'm just delighted to meet you. This is our first meeting, and I've spent the last 30 years or more obsessively, compulsively investigating paranormal places. So you're exactly the kind of people I want to meet. I didn't start out necessarily falling through a vortex. I started out studying extraordinary healing tools and techniques, and then was introduced to the idea of alchemy. And then through, I would say, divine intervention, which I can go into more, but shorthand, by divine intervention, I was introduced to these visionary maps, these geometric maps of the relationship between sacred places. And when that was handed to me on a silver platter, then I recognized it as being, and to me, an invaluable alchemical tool, these maps. And I began to work with earth energies as a kind of an alchemy. And I could say I was very much inspired by a being I call Ascended Master Saint Germain.
Right.
Goes by many names, I would say. And so I've been working with the landscape, the earth energies, and the science behind the earth magic. I would say I've got a bachelor's of science in geography, went out and got a degree so I could hopefully better understand and explain what these broadly cast energies are that have a direct relationship and a one-to-one relationship with the energies of our physical body. And let me say that I've only just met you. I haven't had a chance to even do my homework and listen to much of your previous work, but in the little bit I listened to, I was let me say, a little humbled by the depth of your direct experience with these types of energies. I published a couple vortex maps. One your readers may well be familiar with. It's the Becker-Hagen's Earth Star globe. It's a geometric map, folds up into a globe, and it shows the geometric relationship between sacred places around the world. 62 points combination of the icosahedron and dodecahedron, and centered on the Great Pyramid, shows the relationship of Easter Island, Bermuda Triangle. That's the Earth star globe. I have another showing a circle of 19 points around the Grand Tetons that includes Shasta, Sedona, Tahoe. Many halfway points are significant. Crater Lake for one. So sorry to go on so much, but that's a bit of my background of actually merging the rational logical hemisphere, hopefully with the visionary hemisphere. But I would say I don't even compare to you as a kind of a visionary, just from the little bit I've heard. So I'm delighted to meet you.
Very good. Well, we're excited to have you here. And from my experience too, I love the work you're doing now. And I'm just scratching the surface also. I'm just discovering your work. And I'm fascinated how a lot of researches are coming from different angles, and they're all realizing the same thing. I've been studying Taoism now for quite some time, and some of the Taoist masters from thousands of years ago were talking about this microcosmic orbit, essentially explaining how our bodies are attached to all of these frequencies around us and how they affect us. And once you obtain that self-mastery, you can start to use those energies to your benefit, for your healing, for your longevity, for your prosperity, and all of that stuff. So here's some of the graphics that the Taoists talk about here. And so I'm excited to have this conversation with you guys on all of these fronts. And I'm guessing right off the bat that this episode is not going to be enough. We're going to have to get you back on and get into some more details. So Indigo, why don't you take the floor here and start maybe peppering Dan here with some of your questions and your comments, and we'll try to get into some content for the audience. Dan, you're lifting your hand. You have anything else to add on before?
Before we go to the next stage, I just want to step back to the Taoism for a bit. I'm a huge fan of the work of Montauk Chia. He's got a beautiful work on befriending the trees. And if you haven't availed yourself of this short article from Montauk Chia on befriending the trees as an exquisite, I think, almost an epitome of what it means for me, what is a vortex. And it's this absolute unity between our own human energy field, the chakras, the microcosmic orbit, etc., with the energy of the entire cosmos. Lovely, lovely. So that we can open ourselves up to just the awareness that we are part of this energetic system of the cosmos, and to refine how we experience that directly. Yes. So thanks for letting me make that point.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that with the audience here too, because as we get all of these amazing minds together, we cue each other to, maybe we have downloads so that we can share with the audience. And often I see comments in the chat, and this is why we do our videos live, so that the audience can also bring in their pieces of the information, and together we get a bigger puzzle, or completion of the puzzle. So I love this experiment. So Indigo, back to you here. I know you're excited to dive right in, so the floor is yours. How do you want to proceed with this?
Yes, I just wanted to say hello and thank you for coming on the show. It's a pleasure to meet you. I kind of noticed that my connection was kind of going in and out, so hopefully I can stay with you guys here. But yeah, Jean-Claude, is it okay, Dan, if we pull up the book and kind of go through some of the graphs themselves? Okay.
That's lovely. Sure. Yeah.
Okay, let me do that here while we're here.
So we were kind of, before you jumped on, we were trying to kind of tie into where we were astrologically and cosmologically with the winter solstice and some of the activations that were happening according to solar stargates that have been defined by ascensionglossary.com, some of Lisa Renee's work. So all across the globe, there are specific vortex locations that are defined by specific stargates in the sky, or specific constellations. And so one of them that was really activated at this time due to the winter solstice is considered a 12-dimensional gate that's in Monsegur, France. So it really just aligns to all of the vortexes and all of the work that you've done here. So I think that is amazing. And that's why I'm really excited to be talking with you right now, honestly. So I kind of wanted to go over, so what is the idea of the pentagram? So you see that France is kind of defined by the pentagram. So what does this mean, and how does this relate to us spiritually, and how does it tie into everything here? Because it seems to kind of be the basis. I know that the pentagram is the five senses. It's five wounds of Christ. It symbolizes the Holy Spirit descending on people. It's the five elements. So how do you kind of tie that in with the geometry and the geography?
Beautiful. Thank you. The shape of France. I'm getting a little bit of an echo. Apologize.
Yes. Indigo, please put your microphone on mute. I think we're getting the echo back from your computer. We'll try that.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Okay, thank you. I very clearly see a pentagon or pentagram in the shape of France, but since I released that book and I'm continually updating my ebooks, I've heard from somebody in France who has told me that the French themselves equate the shape of the country with six-sided star. So here is a perfect example of how so many different vortex researchers have so many different opinions. I myself feel like one of the blind men just trying to understand one part of an elephant. And everybody brings to the study such diverse background and experience. I think we each have a piece of the puzzle, and much of my work has been bringing together other people's works. Yes, so I did create that image on the front of the book, so I'm responsible for that and likely update it in the next edition. But it doesn't negate your point about what is the significance of the five-sided shape, yes? So there's correspondences that if you start with the number 5 and you look for correspondences with fiveness, you could go on infinitely, but the same is true with sixness, yes? So we think of the 5 as being the feminine and the 6 as being the masculine, don't we? And the 6 being the two-dimensional representation of the star tetrahedra that you've got spinning at the top of the screen there. Yes, so almost a shadow in flatland of a hyperdimensional shape. Yes, so you can think of the crop circles in the same way. So I'm kind of free associating here, but your question on fiveness, how it associates with France, would be in the eyes of the researcher there. I would be, I think, more productive to investigate the sixness that the French themselves are relating to. I haven't done that yet, actually. So what I've done in France Vortex Maps is I was going to France, and I thought, I've got any number of maps of France. So I wanted to have them with me when I traveled. So I put them together. They're almost all from different sources. There's some very, very rich sources for geometric maps of France. We're, I think, almost all of us familiar with the Dan Brown works, the Da Vinci Code, how he dramatized these landscape geometries, which have a basis in fact. And Monsegur is part of this exquisite, actually, combination of 5- and 6-pointed stars in the landscape there in the natural environment. We get past the cover.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually have it printed out in front of me here.
Dan, do you want to direct me here with either the book or the file that you send me on your website? Is there a specific page you would like me to bring up now as we go through these conversations? Please let me know what you want me to share with the audience and when here.
Sure. Well, there's one map in particular, which is kind of the grandfather of all the geometric maps of France. And that comes from a book called Gen Isis by Henry Lincoln, if I'm not mistaken. There's also an author, David Wood, who's written extensively on this geometric landscape of France. So Don't have the book right in front of me myself, but it's relatively brief, very highly graphical. You've got about 25 different geometric images, images of maps and geometric relationships of places on maps. And some of them I've brought in from other, most of them I've brought in from other researchers, let's say. And then I've also generated a number of similar using the Earth star globe behind me here, and a program in Google Earth that provides all the data points. And when you zoom in on, there's a there's a real fiveness to the Earth star globe there. There's a various kinds of symmetry there. There's bilateral symmetry. There's what you're looking at there is, thank you, diamonds that are made up of 4 triangles. Yes, those triangles themselves are profound. They've got these 3, 4, and 5 ratio sides. The 3, 4, 5 triangle, we call it. There's a right triangle in there that is reflected in both directions, creates that diamond. This projection of the Earth grid gives you these 30 diamonds. Ultimately, there's 62 points on there. And there's this program that's available. There's a Facebook group called eNews Earth Grids. And also at vortexmaps.com, you'll find the links to how to use Google Earth to look at these maps in greater and greater magnification.
Very good. Okay. Amanda, back to you.
Yeah. I kind of wanted to talk about page 5. There's a picture on the top there, and it seems like there's one ley line that's going through what looks like close to the eye of the Sahara in Mauritania. Yeah, that top picture there. I thought that was interesting because all those points are kind of generating to what seems like the eye of the Sahara in Mauritania, which is like a giant circular formation. And I think we've talked about that before, Jean-Claude, and one of the maps we've kind of zoomed into it before, but it kind of has the geometrics of Atlantis, like the formation of the geometric, architectural, energetic pattern of it. So I think it's interesting that all those points lead up to that spot. And then the picture below it, that ley line that goes through, so that's the actual ley line. Now that goes through the tip of France. Okay, now that's interesting. So I think that's actually like the planetary 0-point field almost.
Okay.
In terms of vertical ley lines.
Okay, I get it, like prime meridian in a certain sense.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me just back up just a hair so to describe what we're seeing there. Again, we've used Google Earth and installed the points that show us these 62, let's say, major Earth points, geometric points, the combination of the icosahedron and the dodecahedron. That gives us those 62 points. And there's an evolution of that where it comes to Beth Hagen's Bill Becker, and Bill Becker, with his background with Buckminster Fuller, he's able to evolve the model that came from Russian researchers through Christopher Bird in an article in New Age Journal. They realized that, okay, there must be struts between these points. It's this complete geometry. And that's been the evolution, the first steps of what we know as the planetary grid. The icosahedron, the dodecahedron, anchored in Egypt in the Nile Delta there, just offshore the Nile, what's now offshore the Nile Delta. Yes, that's the kind of the 0 point for this geometry here. You can fully reset that geometry to, let's say, Avebury, bam, get a whole new set of points going on that some people feel is, wow, this is even more revelatory than the one that's anchored in Giza. Yeah. So this version, that these images that we're looking at here, these are the major points, but there are many, many other systems, minor points. There's this the tetrahedral grid that comes out at 19.5 that Hoagland is so fond of, and that we see on all the other planets, Cydonia, this and that. That's the tetrahedral. Then there's Bruce Cathey, who had a cubical grid where he was sighting as a New Zealand air pilot. He was mapping clusters of UFO sightings. He came up with a cubic grid. So there's that system. Yeah. But in this system, what we're seeing is this north-south line that cuts right down the coast of France. What I found was so interesting was, again, if we look a little closer at that upper image, what we'll see is that the north-south line there just beautifully defines how that, the tip of the western coast of France and through those, I guess it's the bottom image, my bad. But you can just see it. It's good to see them both. Look at how that slices right down the coast there and helps define the coastline. And we see that on the Earth star globe. We see how beautifully that geometry matches with the coastline of, let's say, South America, or you might say Australia. We begin to see, first of all, natural features. Every one of these 62 geometric points has some kind of extraordinary natural features, or in mineral deposits, unique soil types, unique plant and animal species, magnetic signatures where you've got, maybe it's lava, it's got some paleomagnetism, it's got the imprint of when that lava hardened. Now it's an anomaly compared to the surrounding field. Yeah. So we've got all these vortex markers, not just electromagnetic, but geophysical. We've got them below the surface in ore and mineral deposits, and we got them on the surface. And of course, above the surface, we've got these just churning electromagnetic ocean of electrical currents running through the earth due to various causes, moisture, minerals in the earth, piezoelectricity of quartz crystal deposits under pressure. So thanks for letting me hog the airwaves.
No, that's so interesting.
Pepper you with
so
questions.
Fascinating.
Amanda, do you mind if I jump in with one question?
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by this north-south line here, Dan, because a couple of years ago, I remember seeing a show where they had discovered this cave structure, and I believe it was just in the water or underneath the water on this west coast of France here. And what they found in this cave was pictures of star constellations, and the researchers were looking at that and saying, hey, if this cave was above water at the time it was made, it would bring us back so far to where we couldn't even see or know about these different planets and star clusters. Do you know what cave I'm talking about here? And maybe
I wish I did. I wish I did. Okay, just like I said, what's now off the coast of Egypt, yeah.
Right.
I'm just, of course, who wouldn't be fascinated with underwater archaeology? We know that the sea level is continuously changes.
Right.
Humans put themselves at the coast, and how much has got to be submerged? The fact that this Earth grid point in the Nile Delta there is offshore is so suggestive. And again, it's not, the work doesn't originate with me. I published the Becker-Higgins Earth Star Globe. And behind me, you can also see a bit of the wheel with 19 points around the Grand Tetons. That's from another researcher named Dorothy Lyran. And I'm just compiling as much of this visionary mapping as I can at vortexmaps.com.
Very good. So I will send you, as soon as I refine that article, and I'll send it to you and see how maybe that fits into some of your research. So sorry about that. So Indigo, back to you.
Well, I just want to say thank you for kind of clarifying that for me, because I've been studying maps for quite some time, and I feel like I've always been trying to find like a specific focal point of like the main 0-point field or like the main zero meridian. And like what you're saying is that it shifts and changes based upon the geometric structure that the Earth is expanding into, because it goes from a dodecahedron or an icosahedron. I just made your brain turn there.
Well, this is what I mean by I'm going to interrupt. You are an incredible visionary, that you can just kind of put those pieces together out of the noosphere, the collective consciousness, that yes, the Earth, the planet, let me reframe, if I can, put words in your mouth. The planet itself is this divine being that's also undergoing its ascension process and evolving from simpler forms into more complex forms, yes? And so we have perhaps simpler geometric forms into more complex geometric forms. And so I hear you just pulling that out of the air. And so it's wonderful.
She does that all the time. And that's why I have her on the show. And everybody's like, Slack John. And I have to always say, wait, say that again. I'm fascinated because, of course, Indigo studied a lot of information from other people here. And then she made it her own. And she's really, really on the forefront of some of these new. That's why this episode is called Galactic Download, and it's very fascinating to see what she's doing and how it's tying to other researchers. And this is one of the main goals of this channel is to bring all of these people together so that we can collaborate and like I say, really get that puzzle going. So I'm excited to have both of you on, and thank you so much. I'm like a kid in a candy store here today having this conversation.
Me too.
Awesome. Indigo, is there a next page you want to show here for your next question? Let me know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, Dan. In the meantime.
Well, I had one other question too. So, in terms of the icosahedron, now, do you find those energetic points are more geared toward water locations, or like the high tides and the low tides on the planet? Because I know that icosahedron is like the fractality of water.
That is totally beautiful. It'd take maybe 15 minutes to answer your question, and I have to actually back up a little bit to the. It's brilliant. If you would, could you show the Gen Isis image, the Lincoln and Woods image of the 5-pointed star, 6-pointed star combination? It's probably the most complex one in the France Vortex Maps book. If you would.
Okay, so let me. So Dan,
it's not going to be in the first 5 pages because that's mostly Earth grid stuff, I think.
And do you know what page that's on, Dan? I don't want to scroll too fast here and get everybody dizzy, but let me try to find it here then.
It's like flipping through a tarot deck. So let me get to it. Well, I'll speak while you're going. So
not this one here. Let me just bring him. Is this the one you're talking about?
Ooh, we're getting close. Let's pause there for a
minute. Great.
Okay, so we're going from simpler to more complex here too.
Okay, great.
So what we're looking at here, and it's maybe a little tough to see on the screen, but I'll describe. You're looking at the French countryside, and oh, lovely. And you can see that various prominences, natural features make up these points of this geometry. So you've got this exquisite landscape geometry that makes this 5-pointed star. And the odd numbers generally considered to be feminine. The even numbers generally considered to be masculine, and correct me if I'm wrong. But then when you combine a 5 and 6-pointed star, then you're effectively combining polar opposites or complementary yin and yang. Yes, so when you combine the 5 and 6, now you've got essentially ascension, the rectification of polarities, the merging of opposites there, you could say. Yeah, so the merging of the 5 and 6-pointed star. So I think if you turn the page, you might find the more complex geometry of the 5 and 6-pointed star there combined. And you'll also see in the Lincoln and Wood work, you'll see what the French considered to be, there it is, the prime meridian, yeah, which is where the French had their, where they measured east and west from. Let's just oversimplify it that way, yeah. And then, of course, with the British, let's say, hegemony, worldwide hegemony, they moved the prime meridian to Greenwich, right? So if you move the clock back, you might find that the world measured its prime meridian from essentially the Nile Delta there, that beautiful complex on the whole continent of Africa there with the Nile River and all the ancient monuments. And then if you're doing grid research, it's nice to be able to actually shift that prime meridian there and see what new things show up in that time period or with this alignment of the grid. The icosahedron now and the dodecahedron, of course, these have correspondences with 5 elements. And I could perhaps bring up an image like that for you. Bring this forward, we'll see how this works for us. So here you can see this 5 and the icosahedron and dodecahedron. This mirroring is so tough, isn't it? So is that coming out for you at all?
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can see these geometric shapes inscribed in this compound shape, because the icosahedron and dodecahedron, they are dual platonic solids. That spinning dual tetrahedron up in your screen there, the tetrahedron is a dual to itself. It has points where it has faces, yeah? Where the icosahedron and the dodecahedron, they have this complementary, almost like the 5 and 6 combining, yes? Where you're merging these polarities, and one has points where the other has faces. So the certain points, certain researchers, let me start, have associated with the points with a yin, yang, and neutral. Becker-Hagen's provided a map of the points of the globe, the global grid points associated with yin, yang, and neutral. And Beth Hagen's also had a bunch of graduate students looking at other associations of the geometric shapes themselves with the elements. And I don't want to directly answer your question off the cuff about the associations, the correspondences between the geometric shapes, but they do have associations with colors and etc. Because I don't want to get it wrong. I don't want to answer it just from memory there. But you can reference Beginner's Guide to Constructing the Universe, or there's a beautiful tarot deck too, which will show you those correspondences, which is, well, it's out of, I'm not going to be able to pluck that out of thin air either, but there's endless, you can put a book together about correspondences, which I may well do. I've already compiled so many correspondence lists, but what you find is that if you start with number, let's say you start with number, then you can find associations for day of the week and herbs and just on and on. You get this drop a pebble in a pond, you get a certain ripple, yeah? But if you start with, let's say, the dodecahedron or the geometric shapes, the platonic solids, and then you look for correspondences, now you're going to get a whole different set of ripples, if that makes sense. So it's fascinating to see different correspondence charts from different researchers where they have a different starting point. Maybe they're starting from the 5 elements, the Taoist system of the 5 elements. Bam. I mean, that's, yeah. I think, your definitive source there for those correspondences.
Right.
But then different visionaries start from different starting points. You might start from the constellations and look for correspondences, and you'd end up with something different. And if you'll allow me 30 more seconds, I just want to point out, just to draw the thread back to your introduction, which I'm going to have to go listen to. We're talking about today, a certain moment in time, joining with other people all over the planet in a delicious shared vision and meditation at a time when the cosmos has this exquisite alignment. And we think of these 4 quarter days, the solstice, the equinox, as being days when these energetic lines in the planet either expand or collapse, depending on which researcher you're talking to. So these energetic lines, they have a life of their own. They have biorhythms. Today's the day we're all gathered together, continuously, collectively, envisioning this planetary ascension. So I just want to give voice to that and to tie it into vortexes and vortex maps now. So what, as above, so below, we see in the sky, we see constellations, and we look on the earth, bam, there's those same constellations. Now, they may be actually, let's say, here's our constellation in the sky. Here's the reflection on the ground. Bam. It may match that way, right? In natural features or in built features. However, there's also this. You look up at the sky and it looks like this down on the earth, if that makes sense. So you may get this reflection or you may get that reflection in the landscape of the constellations in the sky. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So we're looking for these, and Beth Higgins herself has developed a sky star where she does see this geometry in the sky, and you can see that at vortexmaps.com. Sky star, you probably Google image search that. You'll come up with essentially that same geometry in the sky.
Very good. Dan, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the works of Richard Hoagland earlier. In your view, in the research you're doing now, what's the connection between some of the sacred geometry and the sites on the planet Mars with the work you're doing now here on planet Earth? Maybe briefly touch that a little bit for the audience who might be intrigued of this off-world resemblance to our own here.
Right. I think the place to begin is that everything in creation has a geometry to it. If anything exists in physical reality, it shares a geometry. It's as if it's the universal language down at the molecular level, right? Looking at molecules, they have this geometric nature. Different ones have different natures. Salt, bam, it's a cube. Quartz, six-sided. Right? Those volcanic features that you see, six-sided. As the lava cools at a certain temperature, you get the Devil's Causeway, right? These exquisite geometric pillars, hexagonal pillars in the lava, depending on the temperature it cools.
Okay.
So, beautiful. Oh, there we're seeing the prime meridian that's bisecting the 5 and 6-pointed star, the combination of the 5 and 6-pointed star. I got off on a little bit of a tangent there. Call me back to your original question, will you?
I believe he was tying in the extended pentagram, also encoded on Mars.
Thank you. So where I want to go with that is that on every planet we see the manifestation of these geometries in real life, right? Whether it's the electromagnetic template generating these landscape features and this reciprocal relationship of the landscape features generating the electromagnetic template, we see these geometric points manifest on all the planets, even on the gas planets. We see the great storm on Jupiter at night, approximately, it's huge, 19.5 degrees. On Mars, we see Cydonia, where Hoagland has identified, well, there's the face, there's this 5-sided pyramid. I'm personally of the opinion that there is architecture on Mars. It's, to me, when you look at the geometry, well, first of all, there is natural geometry, but the geometry is such on Mars that, to me, the analysis looks like architecture. But I don't find Hoagland's analysis convincing because I was acquainted with a gentleman named Fred Mills, and Fred Mills has a different analysis of the architecture on Mars, and it is so similar, and it's, I think, on the next page or two of the France Vortex Maps book. It's that same extended pentagram that you see in France on Mars. There it is. So that's from Fred Mills. The extended pentagram that you see in France, replicated on a very fine grid. It's a little hard to see the grid in this image, but there's a background grid that, apologize for that, may not be the right image there for that purpose. There's a more complex image, let's say, that has a very fine grid behind it where you can see the actual geometry. It's of the grid that defines the architecture on Mars. It's a match for France.
Wow. Fascinating.
It's interesting that it's encoded to France specifically out of any of the other countries. Have you noticed any other relation to any other countries besides France in terms of the geometry on Mars, or is it is there a specific alignment that has allowed that visibility, or?
You know, wow. I don't know if I can even speculate on why well, I can. I think you find what you look for. Knock and the door shall be open. There are so many different versions of grids on the Earth. It just seems almost endless. There's this, of course, the Becker-Huygens one that's anchored in the Nile Delta, and then somebody else has anchored that same geometry in Avebury. There's these other geometric models that are planetary-wide, and then as you zoom in, you see it's fractal, and you find these finer details on the planet, whether it's equilateral triangles, 3, 4, 5 triangles, phi triangles, phi triangles, the 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11 pointed stars. London, for example, has this exquisite 20-fold geometry from Christopher E. Street. So it's virtually endless. As you zoom in, it just seems like you'll find what you're looking for. But I can't speak to why this, maybe if you looked in other countries, you'd find the same extended pentagram.
Okay, yeah. I can agree, because it's the electrical field, or the fractality is just, it's constantly shifting, or like you said before, expanding or collapsing. So we're in a constant state of, transformation or reformation. Or you said something earlier too, that we're even expanding into new geometries, or even. Now, do you think the planet itself is expanding in size because of that? Are we growing as a planet, and to some degree?
I just don't see how that equation works. We've got a certain amount of mass. I've had miraculous experiences. I've had direct experiences, healing experiences with these Earth grid points, which I'm happy to share. I try to do my best to talk about the difference between what is my direct experience. If I'm talking about somebody else's research, I've done my best to cite it. But my direct experience of these grid energies is sometimes I get a tingling in my face, my third eye. I actually get a tingling in my nose. It's happening now. Sometimes I can directly associate it with some kind of electromagnetic feature, but I think there's these other finer energies that are not necessarily electromagnetic. And again, would you re-ask your question? I'm sure I didn't answer it. I went off there.
I was just referencing the fact of how the fractality is constantly shifting, and that maybe the planet itself is expanding and contracting in maybe like size or diameter or mass to some degree. But I think you answered everything very well, and definitely have hit a lot of amazing points. And I appreciate it.
Let me bring a comment in here from the audience here, and thank you so much, everyone, for joining us live. And this is a live interactive show. We appreciate your comments and your questions as we go along too. So if you do have questions for author Daniel E. Shaw here on the France Vortex Maps, please put them in high caps here in the chat so that I can bring them up and share them on the screen for you folks. But William Wallace is saying here, he's touching upon what Dan just said about feeling these electromagnetic fields and having different effects on the body. William is saying, I can't stop seeing the spiral in my vision. It's been going on for weeks. Last night, it was off the charts. And of course, if I bring this up here and we look at the Schumann Resonance, there's been some activity there as well as of late. I wonder, Dan, how do you factor maybe some of this information here into your research as well, but also as a human feeling into these energies and how they're affecting our everyday lives?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That is a brilliant follow-up question, because what I want to draw to a point is that I've had, I would say, miraculous experiences, and still, on some degree, I remain a skeptic. I hope to be presenting the science behind Earth magic. There's a real unity there. The more we know how the universe works, the more we can work with the universe. It's the same as if you're working with wood or fabric or herbs. These are also alchemical processes if you or consider them that way, if you're willing to have that intention about it. If you're receptive to that, you can use working with any kind of material as a kind of alchemy. And I'm hoping to, well, I'm a skeptic, I can't help it. So with the Schumann resonance, there again, we're talking about, as with the mass of the earth, with Schumann resonance, it's based on this cavity, yes, between the earth itself and the ionosphere. In other words, the high altitude, there's an electrical, an ionic layer of the atmosphere called the ionosphere. And between the ionosphere and the earth, now you've got a cavity, which is a resonant cavity, like the cavity inside of a violin, right? So the Schumann resonance that we're seeing, and again, Bachelor of Science in Geography, it's as far as I went. I'm not a geophysicist, but you've got this resonance, this so-called Schumann resonance, which is based on the cavity between the Earth itself and the ionosphere. Now, there is beautiful. So now we're seeing that cavity is subject to various forces and fluctuations and cycles, of course, based on all these various cycles of the sun, the short and long-term cycles that we're only beginning to understand, the 11, 22, maybe the 52,000 year cycle. All these things have a direct impact, the sun and maybe the center of the galactic system, right? The great solar sun, impacting the electromagnetic field of the Earth there. And of course, differentially on the daylight side of the Earth and the nighttime side of the Earth, as the Earth rotates, you on the surface of the Earth are rotating through a very, very active interface called dawn and dusk. Yeah. So your orientation on the planet to this stream of solar particles, these charged ionic particles coming from the sun, these things impact our Earth differently too, according to the latitude. Okay, so a little bit of background there on what you're looking at on the screen there. The Schumann resonance being this cavity between the electrical part of the atmosphere and the Earth. So I'm absolutely convinced that it's possible that consciousness is directly, I would say, identical to the ionosphere, right? From an alchemical standpoint, there is no separation. Our consciousness is the ionosphere, and it is the Schumann resonance. And that's probably the sound clip you'd use on the History Channel. But from a scientific standpoint there, the Schumann resonance is invariant. It is not going to change unless the size of the Earth changes or the height of the ionosphere significantly changes, like on a climactic long-term cycle, right? That's the only thing that's going to change that resonant cavity between the two, is a change in where those two interfaces are. So I'm not a big fan of the theory that consciousness is directly impacting the ionosphere. Now, if you intended to directly impact the Schumann resonance, you might be able to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. But again, we could probably do a 40-part series here to get into just that. So, folks, we're just skimming a lot of topics here for you, and we're trying to bring all of this together, and we're getting to know each other here. And now we can collaborate all of our thoughts here to get the bigger picture. Amanda, please go on here. Is there another page you want me to bring up? Is there for your next question here for Dan?
I can just qualify that. I don't mean to make the mistake of scientism. That is the kind of scientific hubris that is actually anti-scientific. I don't claim to have the answers. I have some questions. I have a lot more questions than answers for sure. I don't claim to have all the questions. I don't know if I even believe what I'm saying because, my perception. I'm not omniscient. I'm not consciously aware of being this directly fully open channel to the divine that in reality I am. I'm living in a kind of limited perception here of my own divinity, right? So I don't claim to have all the answers. It's what's fascinating to me is this great mystery. And so that's why I've been compelled to seek the answers everywhere that I can, directly and from other people.
Do you want to get into Amanda here, maybe crystals, because you and I are very attuned to different crystals and their energies. And as you know, we've had an episode a couple of weeks ago. My daughters were looking for more crystals for their birthday as well. And I see in the document that Dan gave us here, he's talking about how these crystals in the planet are also interacting with these electric fields and also with global consciousness of the planet and also us as humans. So maybe that's the direction here we can take a little bit. Amanda, unless you have other things where you want to get back into the maps, I really want to give you as much room here to navigate as possible. So you let me know what you want to do.
Well, I kind of feel like if we were to dive more extensively into the remaining maps, we might be talking for quite some time. But I mean, I would love it if you'd be open to maybe coming on to do another show at some point. We could dive deeper in some of the other vortexes and maybe even some of the other books that you've done. Seems like you've put quite a bit together on vortexmaps.com that we could really dive into a lot more of it.
Of course, there's nothing else I'd rather do more than talk further on your show. Of course, yes, you've just asked brilliant questions. I'm so grateful for you helping me do my dharma of sharing this information.
Very good. Okay, so why don't we maybe take questions from the audience? So folks, if you have any questions for Dan here, let's bring them up as we try to close this portion of the show. And Dan, I'll throw you back that ball again, and we'll get back into the crystals here, because that is a big, fascinating topic for a lot of my audience here. How do you see all of this technology interacting both with the planet and with the humans here as it comes to crystals, and how essentially they're part of this grid with us here, and there's an intelligence there, and we can. So I don't know how much you've studied into this here, but I'm sure the audience is very fascinating to see what your perspective is into the roles of crystals here.
Dang. Well, I just hope the audience can have compassion for me and appreciate how important it is to write down these multi-part questions.
Sorry about that. So to make it more simple, I'm referring to your PDF here, and we're talking about how crystals are affecting the planet and how they are interacting with the electromagnetic energies hitting us. So whatever you want to share about crystals into your research, I think would be appreciated to the audience.
Sure. Well, from my standpoint, as a Bachelor of Science in Geography, it seems logical to look for the simplest explanation first. So I looked at, let's say, generally accepted science, electromagnetic energies in the earth, the sea, and the atmosphere. And that is a very, very rich subject. Where as a civilization, even though we're seemingly going to Mars, we are just in the infancy of science and just barely understand electromagnetism and, named electricity and magnetism wrong because they don't seem to be separate phenomena. They seem to be unified. So as an alchemist, I'm interested in very fine, subtle energies, magic, intention, will, desire, receptivity, all these things, yes. So I'm trying to merge the alchemy and the science there. And but I wanted to look first at like the Occam's razor, the simplest solution. So you look at the electromagnetic fields in the earth and you find, wow, there's all kinds of electrical currents. You can measure the conductivity and resistivity in different soils. More moist soil, more magnetic soil, it's going to have greater conductivity. Then you get these interfaces between different types of features below the surface. Those are very interesting. Quartz crystal is one of the most prolific, most widespread, most abundant, materials on the planet. When you get this, well, silica is, and when you get it crystallized there, what you get is a material that is actually piezoelectric. When you apply pressure to quartz, it actually gives off an electrical charge. Yeah. And so what's going on underground? Well, it's under pressure. Of course it is. And it's underground. And then as the moon orbits around the earth, you get this exquisite geometry, which, wow, it turns out you showed it in the last show. It's called barycentrism, right? Where is the center of mass of the Earth? Well, it's orbiting around inside of the Earth because of the gravitic impact of the moon. And then you went further and you talked about, well, here's the gravitic impact of our planets and the sun. And these things are all not separate. They're totally unified. Yeah. So as the moon orbits around the Earth, now you get the tides, not only the oceanic tides, but you also get the continental tides. There's this oblation, this flattening of the Earth that happens. And so the center of gravity is actually orbiting around inside the Earth. You measure gravity not just down, but an XYZ axis. It's highly dynamic. Barycentrism. So I couldn't believe the first 15 minutes of that link you sent me. Amazing. That image. Now underground, so now you've got these diurnal or daily, twice daily really, cycles of pressure on these quartz crystals, right? So this Earth really is a breathing Earth with these varying pressures on these quartz crystals underground. The entire state of, what is it, Arkansas, massive underground deposit of quartz crystal. It actually goes across the state lines, and it's not the only state. It's just it's got this substructure of massive quartz crystals. Arkansas just happens to be a singular quartz form that's perhaps the largest in the world. So that's quartz crystals creating these varying cycles of electricity underground, subsurface. And then you've got surface features. There's one where you've also got quartz containing stone under pressure. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So these things, they're set up like a musical instrument. They've got compression and they've got tension. And when the rock is under tension, it does ring. It has an acoustic property based on its shape and mass. And so there's an acoustic element of Stonehenge. And I could go off, but there's electrical currents, of course, in the atmosphere as well. You can actually conduct electricity through the atmosphere, as we all know, if there's enough moisture in the air. Or with the ionosphere, lightning strikes happening around the Earth at all times. So there you go. Simplest level, electricity and magnetism. But then there's all these finer energies as well. We haven't even touched on tectonic forces and such. So another show? Sure.
Go ahead, Amanda.
No, that's great. I was actually going to ask you, so what do you think the spiritual uses were of Stonehenge?
I've written a book called Stonehenge Gardening Tips, Using Earth Energies in Your Garden. And to my mind, and not just me, but many researchers believe that these monuments were designed with an awareness, knowledge, wisdom about these energies, whether we call them electromagnetic or chi, whatever we want to call these energies, prana, orgone. People who built these monuments built them with energetic materials. They had an understanding of how the earth energy works. They were designed to work with the earth energies. First of all, I think they had many, many layers of utility, not just the spiritual utility. Here we're looking at, in this book, Stonehenge Gardening Tips, we're looking at several dozen different elements, components of Stonehenge, and what their energetic contribution is. There's that acoustic element and many others. There's the geometry of the monument itself, its relationship to other monuments, yes? And the ancients, the indigene, I think would agree that these monuments were meant to fructify, to fertilize, to make the land more fecund. And folk wisdom in British Isles, at least, the farmers would pen their animals near these stones together for mating, and they would more often have twins. And hence why we find so many towns in the UK that have the sound twin in their name, according to some researchers.
Very interesting.
Awesome. We had a question here from John. He's asking, Dan, how about information stored in stones like limestone as well as the granite and also dolomite actually found in the Grand Pyramids? What are your thoughts on all of that?
Right. Wow. Okay, so in terms of energetic materials, if you have quartz, that's one thing. It actually is one thing. It's going to resonate at a very precise frequency. Yeah. My quartz crystal here, if it were pure, is going to resonate at that exact same frequency as your quartz crystal, which is why it's so useful in technology, in modern technology. Yeah. Now, it's, I would say, folk wisdom that there is information stored in quartz crystals. I totally agree with that. And it's possible to, let's say, remote view into a stone for any number of purposes. Yes, you can find like psychometry. Who did this stone used to belong to? Right? What's happened to this stone in its lifetime? Right? Psychometry. Tapping into the information in the stone. Sure, the limestone, it's going to have a different energetic signature than quartz crystal, but people can still directly experience their unity with that material, that divine conscious ascending material, and gather the information from the stone just as they can from the tree.
Yeah, very good. Amanda, why don't you, is there anything else maybe you want to round out the show? Maybe a last question for Dan. We'll do that now. And after that, we'll ask Dan to give his closing remarks. And while he does that, I'll bring up his websites here so people know where to find him. So any last questions from you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the last most interesting part, I mean, just to kind of wrap up my last question or thought on the France Vortex Maps, is the Archangel Michael ley line. So you said that it's oriented 26 degrees north, true east, the same as the Notre Dame Cathedral. That's pretty interesting. Can you allude any bit more on the Michael ley line?
And do you have a page you want me to showcase?
That's page 18.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, because I need to see this as well. Obviously, there's so many different ley lines and ley line systems, vortex researchers. The Michael ley line, generally, that's the one that goes through the UK. Exquisite alignment of points. Right, here we are in France, which is perfect. And this one goes through Mont Saint-Michel. And this is let me say, it's not the most convincing ley line I've ever seen, for a reason that if you want to establish what is exactly a ley line, it's a rifle straight alignment of points on the landscape with a certain statistical significance. I can't just have 5 points across a map. They've got to be, I would say, ideally now, the definition, intervisible on the landscape. I can see one from the next. That'd be one thing. And I'd be using a map with, hopefully, I'd know what the projection is, which direction this projection is distorted. Yeah, because not all maps are alike, right? So here we're looking at a Michael alignment that is in France. It takes in Mont Saint-Michel. As with most of my maps, it's not my own work, but at the bottom it is referenced to a website there which looks like Ancient Wisdom. And Ancient Wisdom is a site that seems to be compiling a lot of different material. I couldn't find a better source, like the original source for this map. But this is in France. In England, we see a much more robust Michael alignment that goes all the way through the country. So many points, so close together, dedicated to St. Michael. And there's definitely reason to believe that does, it's not just across the UK, but it does go all the way around the world.
Is this it here?
I hope that answers your question. Again, I didn't generate that map. I've compiled it, for my own use, and everybody else cited it the best I can, but I didn't generate it myself. I can't take full responsibility for it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for talking about it and just giving us a little bit more information on it.
You bet.
It's interesting. It said it's the place where Saint Michael is said to have fought Lucifer. Is there a specific point on the ley line that would have taken place, or is that kind of an unknown?
Again, I can't point you I can't point you to the original source on that even. So that's actually the limit of what I have on that image. For other researchers to do with what they will. It's just basically a retweet is not an endorsement. Yeah. So I have to qualify that map there. It's not even the most convincing ley line map I've ever seen, but I wanted to put it out there in this compilation.
Well, there's definitely points for discussion and for researchers to grab onto and to continue to work. And that's the beauty of bringing us all here together and with the audience here who might have bits and pieces of this information. So, folks, if you are watching the show and you're interested in this and you're already researching part of this, you can reach Dan, Amanda, and I through the links that we've provided during the show, and they're also in the description box below. And please do share the information and see where that brings us. Amanda, any last questions?
It looks like I think I've asked all of my questions for today, and I just want to thank you so much, Dan, for coming on the show today. It was really a pleasure to get to talk to you. I really appreciate all of your knowledge on the Earth geometry. I feel like I could definitely pick your brain for a while when it comes to some of this stuff, because there's so much, and it really does coincide a lot of the research that I'm constantly doing when it comes to stargates and lunar stargates and ley lines and axial tonal lines. I was going to ask you that a second ago, if you were familiar with axial tonal lines and if you could describe the differences and things like that. But I feel like that would definitely be a good topic to dive more into this stuff for another show. And it was a pleasure getting to know you better today. And thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. Really appreciated it.
Thank you so much. And just in closing, I would say I would invite all your listeners to send me an email at ask@danshaw.com. And I'll send them a free copy of either ebook, whichever ebook you'd like. If you'd like France Vortex Maps or you'd like Stonehenge Gardening Tips, these are two of some of the books and maps that I have at vortexmaps.com. So I will answer every email and I'll send you a free ebook if you'd like, and we can continue the conversation.
Very good. So I've put the email here in the chat so people can click on it and contact you directly. I will put also all of the links to your website and to your books in the description box below as soon as we finish the show. And then do you have any maybe parting messages for the audience here as we close out this portion of the show? And for the audience here, just bear with me here. We are going to flip over, Amanda and I, after this portion to our Patreon show, where we're going to get into more of this meditation here for the solstice and some of the alignments that we're working with. But Dan, please, before we let you go here, is there anything else that maybe we didn't ask you that you feel is important for the audience to know at this time?
Well, today especially, but every day, just know that there's an infinite amount of energy available to you everywhere, right? All the time, for your physical healing, for your psychic opening, and for harmonizing the planet. Wow,
that's awesome. And of course, I'm just in the process now of rebuilding the library that was lost when our previous account was deleted here from YouTube. And in there, we have quite a few shows on raising Kundalini energy. We tie that in with a lot of the old texts from the Taoist and the Tantric perspective as well. And so what Dan is talking about here, of course, echoes a lot of our work in trying to empower humanity to take charge of that energy source that is within, that is our God-given or divine right. So thank you so much for being here, Mr. Shaw. It was a pleasure meeting you. I'm fascinated by your work, and of course, you're welcome back anytime. And I guess on behalf of the audience here at Beyond Mystic, I want to wish you happy holidays and the best of the new year. So thank you so much, Daniel E. Shaw, for joining us here today on Beyond Mystic.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
All right. Amanda, so back to us here. Is there anything else you wanted to share before we switch over here to the Patreon portion of the show?
No, actually, I feel like we've covered quite a bit today, to be honest with you. And it was a really good show. I had a really good time. It was exciting.
Yeah, very good. So how about you and I just flip over now to Patreon for the audience here. We'll get into maybe a few little more surprises and bonus content for them here on the solstice day. So folks, if you want to join us there, you can do so at patreon.com/Beyond Mystic. And there, of course, you're looking for the Insider Access Pass, where we provide added value content for the lovely Patreons who support this work here on YouTube. And of course, you can find Amanda's work here at IndigoAngel222.com, and there you can book a private session with her in terms of your starseed origins. And also, do we still have a coupon code valid for you here, Amanda, maybe on the J-seal removal? Can you explain to the audience what that is?
Yes, so if you would like to do a J-seal removal, the coupon code at the checkout is Beyond Mystic, all lowercase, one word. And I believe it takes about $40 off the service. So,
wow, that's a good discount. That's awesome. All right, folks, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Amanda, for being here. I'm Jean-Claude at Beyond Mystic, broadcasting live from our backup channel. So please remember to like, share, and subscribe.